leeches, boiled meat, bloodletting, black bile, and garlic. These were all staples of Hippocrates' humoral theory, a popular medical belief dating back to 540 BC. There were 4 humors: phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and blood. These fluids balance the functions of the human body, as well as the complexion and behavior of an individual. The functioning body balanced the humors, and the importance of balance would go on to influence the food, medicine, literature, and therefore culture of the Middle Ages. It all began with Alcmaeon of Croton, who lived from 540 to 500 BC. He was a medical theorist who said chemical systems inside the body regulated human behavior. 40 years later, Hippocrates, the, quote, father of medicine, took this concept and ran. He lived from 460 to 377 BC and applied these humors to medicine and explicitly defined them as blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Both scholars insisted that any excess of these vital fluids led to illness. His contemporary, Empedocles, an Italian philosopher, originated the classic cosmic theory of the 4 elements: air, water, fire, and earth. Qualities of these elements were quickly connected to the Hippocrates medicinal theories. He lived from 492 to 432 BC. 500 years later, Galen, a physician and philosopher, would insist that improper balances of the humors conflated behavioral patterns. He believed the humors were formed in the body rather than ingested, although food could affect the humors. Living from 130 to 210 AD, Galen would present the largest body of work to humoral theory. He believed organs had specific functions that maintained the human body, and that the humors were not only secreted by organs, but assured that they functioned properly. From Galen's work came the humors' connections to the seasons of the year, the individual's age, geographical location, and temperature. Also, that specific foods directly increased a specific humor. Most notably, Galen insisted that blood was the most prevalent humor, which would lead to the practice of bloodletting. The findings of these 4 men would be the leading medicinal theory for over 1,000 years, allowing it to become an iconic feature of medieval history. However, this all would come to an end in 1543 AD, when Andreas Vesalius, now known as the founder of modern human anatomy, made findings that directly led to the abandonment of humoral theory. Instead of allowing barber surgeons to perform the dissections in his classroom, which was typical for his time, he performed them all on his own and encouraged his students to do the same. While teaching in Bologna, Vesalius discovered that all of Galen's research had been restricted to animals, considering Rome had not allowed the dissection of the human body. Before this finding, it had been believed that all of Galen's work was based on human anatomy. As previously mentioned, the 4 humors were phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and blood. It is believed that these humors came from visualizing the separation of blood as it settles and oxidizes in a glass. Each humor had different attributes. Phlegm was cold and wet, like winter. An excess in an individual meant they were phlegmatic, often low-spirited, forgetful, reserved, and apathetic. They were classified as pale and white-haired. Yellow bile was hot and dry, like summer. Choleric individuals were daring, but bitter and short-tempered. They were decisive, nervous, aggressive, and ambitious. They behaved irrationally and had yellow skin with a green tint, which we now know was jaundice. Black bile was cold and dry, like autumn. Melancholic individuals were known to be lazy, fearful, creative, but sad and depressed. They had dark hair and dark eyes and were often sick. An excess of this humor led to depression and cancer. Blood was hot and wet, like spring. Sanguine individuals were friendly jokesters who laughed often. They were active, enthusiastic, optimistic, social, and cheerful. However, they were more likely to gain weight and had slightly red but pretty skin. As previously mentioned, it was believed that all individuals had an excess of blood, which led to the medicinal practice of bloodletting. When a medieval patient was sick, their doctor could often diagnose them by sight alone, considering excess humors affected an individual's complexion. If more precautions were required, a doctor would employ diuresis, a urine-based diagnosis where the physician would check the color, smell, and even taste of the patient's urine. From there were three main treatments that could be prescribed: purging, bloodletting, or diet. Purging was the process of ridding the body of harmful or excessive biles via laxatives to make the patient defecate, or emetics to make the patient vomit. Bloodletting required opening a vein via a small scalpel-like tool or with leeches that sucked the blood from the body. The patient would be left bleeding out for hours to days in order to balance their humors. Diet was the most non-invasive and essential tool in the medieval doctor's satchel. Due to the belief that humors were created during the digestion process, food was seen as a form of medicine for balancing the humors. Recall the temporal behaviors of the humors? Well, food was classified under the same parameters. Blood was hot and wet, so foods like wine, heavy sauces, dark meat, sugar, and ginger were believed to have a sanguine disposition. Phlegmatic foods were lettuce, spinach, cucumbers, veal, pork, and fish, raw vegetables, and soup. Choleric foods were bitter and salty, like olives, capers, salt, grilled meat, and spices. Melancholic foods were primarily root-based, having come from the earth, which was the element of black bile. The effects that specific foods had on humors were determined by the taste, growth, qualities, and interactions with other foods. Preparation, whether that be seasoning, spices, sauce, boiling, roasting, etc., could modify the way that the food affected the body's humors. Herbs, for example, were considered airy and warm in quality, so they were related to yellow bile. However, they were also of the earth and dry, so they could counteract foods that had wet and cold properties. Considering meat was known to have a heavy excess of the blood humor, boiling it was believed to be the most effective method in counteracting this, allowing it to cook but still cool down and maintain a lighter and drier disposition and texture. If a patient was melancholic, they would be prescribed a sanguine diet to counteract their excessive black bile. So if you were depressed in the Middle Ages, you were often encouraged by the town's doctor to drink more wine. I present to you the Decameron, written by Giovanni Boccaccio between 1348 to 1353, which is a masterpiece of storytelling and female autonomy. The story follows a group of 10 young Florentines in their blissful quarantine held in the Tuscan countryside as the bubonic plague ravages the city. Boccaccio explicitly wrote in the Proemium that his intended audience was women in love. This was the era's most socially powerless demographic, having been kept indoors towards the back of houses, unable to choose their own fate or lover, and lacking total autonomy and understanding of the world. Each page seeks to educate medieval young women about common sense, integrity, and the importance of balance. Pampinea, a noblewoman of 28 years old, is the initiating actor to the brigade's escape from the plagued city. Once they have made it to the isolated estate, Pampinea creates a small government for the small nation. Through her, Boccaccio writes, "Things that lack order will not last long, and those who lack distinction between what is honest and what is not, prompted only by their appetite, shall be their own downfall." Boccaccio condemns the unbalanced and rash responses to the plague, both those who stayed in the city to drink their lives away, and those who abandoned their families and property to save only themselves. In Boccaccio's eyes, balanced behavior of grace, self-preservation, honesty, and innovation was the only way to maintain humanity in such bleak times. Boccaccio was raised in the Middle Ages and shaped by the humoral theory. Its importance of balance dictated his lens in his perfect small nation. While these four humors seem archaic and almost humorous compared to modern medicine, many humoral techniques and beliefs are carried on today. Cupping was originally a medieval bloodletting technique where alcohol-soaked cotton balls were lit aflame and covered with cups to stimulate blood flow in the inflamed areas. Health-based diets are still an effective way of maintaining the human body and its functions. Despite lacking the understanding or knowledge of germs, microbiomes, and chemical medicines, medical doctors made those discoveries possible. Humoral theory allowed medieval citizens to feel a sense of bodily autonomy, to grasp how their bodies functioned and how best to maintain it. It gave their food a larger meaning than sustenance. With Catholicism so prominent in the Middle Ages, bread and wine were already seen as holy symbols, but humoral theory brought food from the cosmic sphere to inside the human body. It ushered in the Renaissance with its emphasis of classicism and humanism. It inspired learned scholars to look closer into the human body, to try and understand all of its inner workings. Amidst the leeches and the bleeding out that medieval medicine is known for, the reality is that food was seen as medicine. It could heal the body, protect it for years to come, and allow an individual to live as prosperous as possible. And that's pretty revolutionary.